Definitely.
All right.
Good morning, students and learners, and my fellow colleagues, the teachers. This is National Tutoring Campaign, which is made possible by Department of Education with Africa Teen Creeks, Apodites, UNICEF, and the University of Johannesburg. I am Mr. Lucky Klaba, your grade 12 teacher for today for mathematics. And the topic that would be looking at is algebra. I hope we are going to have an interesting session together. Under algebra, that's where we're gonna be asked to solve mainly for X by means of different techniques. So we know that when we solve questions in algebra, there would be questions that require us to factorize. By factorizing, we mean that whereby we have to find a common factor. At times, when we factorize, it would find that it's a difference of 2 squares. And by now, I know you know how to solve those. So we are going to treat them together. There would be questions also that would require us to look at the exponents. We're gonna look at the exponents. I think you remember your exponential laws that you have learned in grade 10 and 11. Then of course, there would be a question that require us to use quadratic formula. The quadratic formula, it is given to us in the formula sheet. Then there would be a question which require us to solve an inequalities. Then there would also be questions that require us to solve the sets. And there is a procedure that we are going to share together on how to solve those. And of course, there would be a question that would require us to use simultaneous equation. In this case, we will be solving for X and Y simultaneously. And remember, when we look at simultaneous equation, we are basically looking at the point of intersection. So under simultaneous equation, remember we are looking at the point of intersection. And there is this question, we call it one of a kind. It's an unknown question. It has not been seen before. It does not follow any pattern from the previous questions, perhaps, that you have been using to prepare for your trial. So we call this an unknown question. So it's one of a kind. So the level 7s, I know this is one question in algebra that you enjoy the most, okay? It can be about 4 marks or so. So even if perhaps you are not teaching at level 7 currently, you can still be able to get your 20 marks in algebra. But I'm going to break down the mark allocation for you so as you see where the marks are located and how to get those. So those are the things which would be done in algebra. But I thought it was also important that we know that which is examinable and that which is not examinable, as guided by the examination guideline of the 2021. So solving quadratic equations by completing the square will not be examined. So it's important, guys, we understand that we are not going to use completing the square, okay, in algebra to solve the quadratic equations. This will not be examined. So it's important that we understand that it is not going to be examined. However, solving quadratic equations using substitution method, what is known as the K method, okay? I think you remember the K method. Usually we use the K method when we have the exponential equation. That one will be examined, okay? So it's important that you understand that using K method, it would be examined. And equation involving sets, okay, that leads to quadratic equations will also be examined. Okay, we did mention that there would be sets, so that also would be examined. Okay, then solution of a non-quadratic inequality should be seen in the context of the functions. Okay, so inequality would also be there, but it should be seen in the context of the functions, which would be doing them on the later stage in the next sessions. The last part that the examination guideline give us is that the nature of the roots, whether the roots are real, rational, non-rational, non-real, will be tested intuitively with a solution of quadratic equations, okay, and all the prescribed functions. Okay, so the nature of the root also can be examined. So it's very important that also you understand the nature of the roots. All right. So the only thing that they mentioned that it is not going to be examined under algebra is completing of the square, solving quadratic equation by completing of the square. It's important that you note this would be non-examinable. All right. Let's now go to the format of the question paper. The format of the paper you should be familiar with. For a trial and also a final is the same format which is going to be used. Okay, so we are going to write out of 150 for paper 1, and these are the topics that would be in paper 1: pattern and sequence, finance, growth and decay, functions and graphs, algebra, equations and inequalities. So which is what we are going to be looking at today: algebra, equations and inequalities. It's part of paper 1. So, and also the differential calculus as well as the probability. So that would be the paper 1. Okay, so out of 150 marks, and you are going to be writing for 3 hours. Make sure that you use that whole 3 hours productively. And that happens, of course, around November, but for preparatory exams and trial, we know that they are starting as early as next week. Okay, and the topics under paper 2, there are only 4 topics under paper 2, which is Euclidean geometry, analytical geometry, statistics and regression, as well as trigonometry. Also paper 2, it would be written for 150 marks over a period of 3 hours. Okay, so make sure that you use the time profitably and you pace yourself very well. So that is the format of the paper. That is the format of the paper for trial, which is preparatory exams, and also for a final. They follow exactly the same format. I thought it's important that we also share the weightings of the paper. All right, it's important that we know how much each topic probably is going to give us. Okay, so for the topic in paper 1, which is the one that I'm going to be looking at, algebra, equations and inequality, now we are looking at about 25 marks. All right, so the lesson of today, we are looking at about 25 marks. So which is algebra, equations and inequality. So we are looking at 25 marks. So are you aware that if now we are able to get this 25 marks, say for the next lesson, next time, it's number pattern, which is also 25 marks, those 2 alone are enough to make you pass your paper 1. Okay, with only 2 topics, algebra and number patterns, it's about 50 marks, which is about 33.3%. So they're enough to make you pass paper 1. So remember, as you prepare for exam, you need to be strategic and know which topics you are able to do and where you are going to get easy marks. All right. So then, of course, others spread out evenly. So the number pattern is 25. And we also have functions and graph, which also give us about 35 marks. Okay. Then you have finance growth and decay, which is 15 marks, differential calculus, which is 35 marks, and of course, counting principle and probability. And we know that students seem to struggle more with finance and probability, but it should not be really a problem, given that according to the weightings, the marks allocated to those two topics is not really much. Like here you can see it's about 15 marks in finance, and for probability it's about 15 marks. So you should not really have a problem not really understanding those topics well. You can still make the most in the paper by answering the questions that you are most comfortable with, and they are very easy marks from. All right. For paper 2, we have statistics. I think you remember it's about 20 marks, is our free marks. Then you've got analytical geometry for 40. Trigonometry, it takes the biggest chunk, it's 50 marks. And we also have Euclidean geometry for 40 marks. So even in paper 2, you have to be strategic. Say if you can focus on statistics, trigonometry, okay? Or rather, trigonometry alone give you 50 marks. So if you want to start passing, you can focus so much on trigonometry and statistics, is about 70. Then yeah, the geometry, you can also try to see where you can best possibly get the marks. All right, so that is the weightings of the paper. Just a recap for our session for today. At the end of this hour, we are hoping to have worked around 25 marks. Okay, of course, you can get about 20 marks if you are not a level 7 learner currently, because there's that 4 marks, which is one of a kind, which I really think if you have that 20 marks, it's fair. It's a fair mark that one can get from that topic. All right. And something important to me was the instruction and information. I came to realize that many of you good learners, you do not read the instruction and information, and that alone poses a serious problem in how you are going to answer. Okay, so it's always good to know that how many questions. Remember, you are going to be allocated about 10 minutes reading time for your paper, where you are not writing anything, you are just perusing through the paper. Use that time to read the instructions and information, okay? It tells you how many questions are in a paper. For an example, there might be 11 questions in the paper. Then you can already start and see if this is 11 questions in a paper, so which questions do I know the best? Which questions are they gonna be easy for me to start with? Then I can start with those questions, okay? So it's important you check how many questions, and also it helps you to pace yourself when you start to write, to know that I have 11 questions, say, to go. So I need to make sure that at this particular time, this amount of questions has been answered, okay? And there's this very important instruction that answer all questions, okay? In mathematics, we do not have any optional questions. So we answer all questions. It's even highlighted that it should be all questions that we answer, no optional questions. So we answer all questions, but strategically by starting with the questions that we know the most. The other part important is numbering. So please use the numbering system that is the same as the one used in the question paper. It's important that you number correctly according to the number system used in the question paper. All right. And also, it's important to clearly show all calculations. Remember, the marks are going to be spread out according to the steps that we have done and the procedure in answering the question. So it's crucially important unto you that you answer your questions, all of them, and you show all the steps. There's no small step. There's no step that you do in your head or the step that you only do in a calculator and is not shown in your answer script. So make sure that you answer all the questions and you show all your calculations and even diagrams where needs be, and even the graphs, okay, that we have used in determining the answer. Show us all. You never know where the mark is going to be allocated to. All right. It's for this reason that instruction number 5 say the answers only will not necessarily be awarded full marks. So for a question of 5 marks and you just write one answer, even if that answer might be correct, you are going to get 1. So make sure that you answer all calculations, you show them, then you are not going to lose or forfeit any marks unnecessarily. And guys, please never forget to bring your calculator. We use approved scientific calculator, non-programmable and non-graphical, okay? So please remember that. And of course, where you have to do the round off, okay? Please, we round off to 2 decimal places unless it can be stated otherwise. But we round off our final answer to 2 decimal places. Important instruction also, the diagrams that would be given to us are not necessarily drawn to scale. So you cannot just read the diagram and figure and say what would be perhaps the coordinates on that, because those diagrams were not drawn to scale, okay? And there is an information sheet which usually comes with the question paper. That is where we are going to get our formulae, okay? So all our formulas would be in that information sheet. And last but not least, if you can write neatly and legibly, it will make it very easy for markers to be able to see what you wrote and award marks accordingly. Now we are set to look at the question, okay? So this is a typical exam question in algebra, okay? So that year it was given about 22 marks, okay? So now let's peruse through. The first thing you see in 1.1, they say solve for x. So we're gonna solve for s by means of different methods available to us, all right? We're gonna solve for x by means of different methods available to us, which are those that I mentioned to you, that we're going to use factorization, we are going to use quadratic formula, we are also going to use different techniques in solving each questions. By the way, all questions are solved differently based on the nature of that question, okay? Then the 1.2 is our notorious simultaneous. It's always there. So for a good 6 marks, and it's done the same way, all right? And 1.3 is that one of a kind question, okay? It's one of a kind question, okay? It's usually the last question in the paper, okay? So let's say you start with 1.1, okay? For 1.1, generally for 1.1, where they say solve for x, okay? Generally in this solve for x, which is 1.1, generally the first thing that we do is to make the left-hand side to become 0, okay? We make the left-hand side to become we take everything to the left rather, and we make our right-hand side to become 0, okay? And if you look at this question, it was good questions, all of them, okay? Look, all of them, there they are. They made it easy for you. So the right-hand side should be equal to 0, okay? So the right-hand side should be equal to 0. So they put it nicely for you in a very good format, okay? It's only on the set that is not necessarily supposed to be 0, because we are going to use a different technique. But for others, that's usually how we do it. We make the right-hand side to become 0, okay? So now we are going to look at 1.1, okay? In 1.1, they say x squared minus 6x is equals to 0, okay? So now when you have a binomial like this one, okay, now you take out a common factor. You have to check what type of a binomial is given to you, okay? If it's given in this way, now you take out a common factor. That's the first thing that you do. You look out for a common factor, all right? That's part of factorization. Now you look out for a common factor, all right? So let's see now, how can we look at that one? We can try to find out a possible solution to this, okay? It was given to us that x squared, okay, minus 6x is equals to 0, okay? Let's just confirm that we copied it correct. Yes, x squared minus 6x is equals to 0. So now, there we are. We take out the common factor. What is common in both? You can see there's x this side and there's x on the other side. Then we take out x as a common factor, all right? Now the x is out as a common factor. After we take out the x as a common factor, you open the bracket, then we are left with x, all right? You take out x as common factor, you're left with x. Then you take out the x here. Here you are aware that you are going to be left with 6 only, all right? Then you say equal to 0. So that is where you are going to get your first mark. Your first mark is going to be exactly on this for taking out the common factor. From there, if these are multiplied, they give us 0. It then means either this one, which is x, is equals to 0, or the other one is the one which is equal to 0. So then if it's equals to 0, we're gonna move the 6 the other side. Then you guys know this by now, then it's gonna be positive. Then that's how you're going to get your mark for this one, for factorization, and for marks for the answer. That's how you're gonna do it. So that's a very simple one, and we hope to get something very similar to that one. All right, so that was the first question, 1.1. Okay, so that was 1.1.1. All right, so now let's look at the second one. The second one, x squared plus 10x plus 8 is equals to 0. Correct to 2 decimal place. So correct to 2 decimal place. As soon as I see this correct to 2 decimal place, I know I'm required to go to look for the formula in the formula sheet. That is the formula for quadratic formula. So every time they're going to give you a good hint to say correct to 2 decimal place, then you know what you're going to do, okay? Then you start and say, okay, let me now write my quadratic formula. All right, then you write your quadratic formula. It would be given to you in the formula sheet, okay? So for 1.1.2, then we have x squared, okay? So it's x squared plus 10x plus 8. So it's x squared plus 10x, okay, plus 10x plus 8 is equals to 0. Right? So, sorry about that. Now we are here, okay? When we get to this point, we now have to solve this. When we solve this, we require quadratic formula. So what quadratic formula say to us? Okay, the quadratic formula say x is equals to minus b, okay, plus or minus of b squared, okay, minus 4ac, okay, yeah, all over 2a. So now that is the formula for quadratic formula, okay? So quadratic formula say that. Then after you have everything now on quadratic formula, you now need the value of b, of a, of c. Now then, how do you go about it? So the A is a coefficient here, the B is a coefficient here, okay? And the C is the coefficient here. So we say A is going to be equal to invisible 1. There is the 1 I'm talking about. Then the B is the coefficient of X, which is going to become 10. Then your C is your constant, okay? Which is going to become what? Is going to become 8, okay? After here, I know very well that you know that you need to take this and substitute it in this formula. All right, we are going to substitute this in this formula as is. So it's going to be minus 10 plus minus, okay. Our B now we have what? 10 squared, okay, minus 4. We are substituting now, right? Minus 4, this is our bracket. Our A is that invisible 1, and our C is our good 8, okay? Then all this is divided by 2 multiply, okay, by 1. So that is how you're going to substitute, all right? So if you substitute that in your calculator using plus and minus, you'd find that your X, you're gonna use your calculator, guys. I think you know how to do your calculator. Make sure it is in the degree mode. Then you'd find that your X is negative 0.88, all right? Or your X is gonna be negative, okay? Or X is going to be equal to negative 9.12. That is the value of your X. So guys, this is how you're going to solve this one, okay? You now have the A, the B, the C. It's quadratic formula because they said round off your answer to the minimum of 2. So there it is. Then how the marks are gonna be distributed for substitution in this formula for this answer together with this answer, then you are able to get your 3 marks. So guys, you cannot get this one wrong. That's where you are going to get your free marks, all right? Then let's go to 1.1.3. So 1.1.3, we are looking at inequalities, all right? So with inequalities, the first thing that you're gonna look at is the critical values, okay? So it's 1 minus x, x plus 2, all right? So 1 minus x, x plus 2. All right, so now we have inequality. It's 1.1.3. Remember, we number according to the number system used. So it's 1 minus x, okay? And it's x, this one, x plus 2, all right? And what is the inequality sign? Let's check inequality sign. It's less than, okay? It's less than. It's less than 0. Okay. So they gave us this, that it is less than 0. So the first thing, guys, when they give us this, the first thing that we look at critical values. So let's make sure that we start with the critical values. Okay. So now what are the critical values? Critical values are the values if we think this inequality sign was an equal sign. If that inequality sign was an equal sign, what the answer could have been, okay? That we call them the critical value. So if this was equal sign, we then say this x was going to become 1, okay? Or how 1 is because this is x, we can take it the other side, it becomes positive and we leave with the 1 behind. So then the x would be equal to 1, or the x is going to be equal to, it's a positive 2. When it goes the other side, it's going to be negative 2. And these guys, we call them the critical values. This is our critical values. Okay, this is our critical values. Okay, and you'll write it nicely, of course. This is our critical values. Then now these are the critical value, but now remember, we don't have equal sign, we have inequality. Okay, so now this is how this is going to work out. You guys know that there's different methods to solve the inequality. Okay, so there's different method then to solve the inequality. Now, if you're going to use the graph, okay, others I know they love the graph, so you can use your graph. Your graph is going to be the graph like this. Okay, the graph is going to be the graph like this. Okay, because now the value of a is going to be negative. Okay, when we multiply everything out, the value of a in ax squared plus bx plus c, the value of a is going to be negative, so our graph is going to be this shape. Okay, now on this graph you are going to have a -2 on your left, then you are going to have a +2 on your right. Okay, now because they told us that this is what, it's less than. Okay, because they told us this is less than, then it means our value is going to go this direction. Okay, and also this direction. It's important that you know that it's going to go that direction and this direction, and then it's going to be opened here. It's also going to be open here because it does not include the -2. It does not include the -1. Okay, that's how then you are going to write. So a number, if you check here, a number to the right of 1, it should be the number which is greater than 1. So then we say x is going to be greater than 1 because a number that we're looking for is the number on the right of 1. But here we look at the number to the left. So if it's to the left, it means that number, it might be -4, -8. It should be a number less than what? It's a number less than -2. Okay, so that is how you use your graph. Okay, and there's also a table. You can still get the same answer. All right, so ultimately you are going to get a mark for your critical values, and you're going to get a mark for this one and a mark for this one. That's how you're going to get your 3 marks. Okay, there's a mark for critical value, for the method used, and of course for your final answer. All right, so it's good that you know how to go about that. All right, so now we are done about that one. We can now go to 1.1.4. All right, 1.1.4. So let's check what it requires of us. All right, it says we have to solve for x, but now there is a set. You see, now there's a set. So if they give us a set, there's a prescribed method that we are going to follow to solve the set. Okay, so it's about 5 marks. Let me look at it again. It's x plus 8. A root of x plus 8 is equals to x minus 2. All right. So I think I can even write it on a clean page because it's 5 marks. So I think there's going to be a lot to be done. Okay. So it says a root of x plus, okay, a root of x plus 18. A root of x plus 18. All right. A root of x plus 18. Now it should be equal to, it should be equal to what we have here, x minus 2. then there's x minus 2. Okay, so there's x minus 2. So that is what is given to us. All right, so now if we are given a set like this, how then do we solve? Rule is you isolate the set. Isolating the set is to make the set stand on one side. So as it is, that first step has been done. So they have isolated the set for us, thanks to the examiner. The second step now is we square both sides, all right? So we have to square both sides. So there is the side, we have to square both sides, okay? We square both sides. So when you square this one, it comes out as x plus 18. Remember, you square the root, the answer becomes whatever is inside, which is this one, x plus 8. Okay, now x minus 2, you guys remember it. We use a FOIL, okay, first, outer, inner, or you can even do it by inspection. And by inspection is going to give you x squared minus 4x plus 4. This is when you solve this by inspection. So by inspection is going to be x squared minus 4x plus 4. All right. So now we have started solving the set. Okay. So now the important part is after this, you write this in a standard form. Standard form is whereby you make the right-hand side to become 0. Okay. So in a standard form, it's going to be x squared. Okay. Now minus 5x. Minus 5x is because this x, when it comes here, it becomes negative. So as a result, it gives us minus 5x. The 18 goes the other side, and it gives us minus 14. Okay, is going to be equal to 0, right? So now that is the step that we needed to write it in a standard form. Afterwards, now that which we do, we factorize. Remember, it now looks like the very first question, 1.1.1. Now we factorize. So when we factorize, we look for factor of x and a factor of x. The factor of 14, that will give us 5 when you add or subtract them. I think we have 7 and 2. They're going to give us 14, right? And the 7 should be minus, so as it becomes greater, this would be positive. Then it will give us minus 7x plus, okay, this one is going to give us plus 2x. Then minus 7x, now we know that we've got correct factors, is equals to 0. Okay, after you have factorized, remember the last part now, you just say x is equals to 7, or your x is going to be equal to negative 2. You take it the other side. So your answer, x would be 7, x is equals to minus 2. But most students end here and they forfeit 1 mark. Remember, you have to take these values, substitute them back in the original equation and check if the right-hand side is equals to the left-hand side. All right. So if you do that, the 7, you put it here, is going to be 25, root of 25, it's 5. When you put 7 here, minus 2, it's 5. So the 7 works. But for negative 2, it's not going to work. All right. So now as a result, this negative 2, we reject it. We say x cannot be equal to negative 2. Then we're going to get a mark for squaring, for writing this in a standard form, and of course, for factorization, and also for both the answer, even the one where we have done some rejection. Okay, so that is also the very interesting part. Yes, that's how you do your sets. All right. Now let's look at the second last question now. So the second last question is this one where we solve this simultaneously. Okay, so we are going to solve simultaneously. X plus 3. Okay, so x plus 3 And also we have what? X plus 3 and this particular equation. All right. X squared, 2x squared plus 4x minus y. All right. I'm going to write it in our board so as we can solve it together. Now I'm going to start on a new page. Okay. I'm going to start on a new page. So this is how we solve our simultaneous equation. So it's going to be x plus y is equal to 3. Okay. Another one is going to be, from this, of course, we can make y a subject of the formula. I think you remember. So we need to make one variable a subject of the formula. So this, you can write it as 3 minus x. Okay, so the minus x goes the other side. Then we also have another equation, which is 2, okay, x squared plus 4, okay, plus 4xy, all right, minus y, okay, is equal to 15. All right, so with simultaneous, we make one equation a subject of the formula, then we call this equation 1, then you come to this one, then you can call this equation 2. Now the next part is for you to substitute, all right? So you can substitute y minus x in this equation, all right? So when you substitute it, then 2x squared is going to remain as is because it does not have a y. You're going to have 4x now, but you see y. Where you see y, you remember that y is now 3 minus x. Then you subtract, you also see your y. Then you remember, because it's negative, please remember to open the bracket. Then it becomes 3 minus x. All this would be equal to 15. So what we did, we have substituted equation 1 into equation 2, okay? Then after you do that, you're gonna multiply everything out, okay? When you multiply everything out, then it's going to come to 2x squared minus 13x, okay, plus 18, okay? This is our 18 plus 18 is equals to 0, okay? After multiplying out and collecting the like terms, then you are going to factorize, okay? Factors of 2x squared is 2x and x, okay? Then the factors of 18, it has to be 9 and 2, all right? Then they should be all negative, so as they give us negative 18 is equals to 0, right? So that's how you're going to factorize that. And from here, of course, you can get the value of x. It's easy to get the value of x, equate this to 0, then you transpose the 9, you get 9 all over 2, okay? Or then you can move this side, you're going to get x is equals to 2. Then, guys, we have solved for x. But remember, the question says solve for x and y simultaneously. So it means what we need to do, we still need to get our y. It's easy to get the y. We come to this equation, we put the value. When we put the value, it's going to give us our y, okay? Then y is going to be negative, all right, 3 all over 2. Or then you put the 2 here is 3 minus 2. This one was pretty simple. Then you get y is equals to 1. So you have solved the 2 equations simultaneously. Then you get your full 5 marks, okay? You get your full 5 marks, all right? Then that's how you are going to get your mark, and there would be the mark for substitution and the mark to write it in the standard form, the mark for factors. There's always marks for factor. And the last mark is for the set of values that you have, okay? So that will be how it's gonna be marked. Very good, very easy, okay? So then let's wrap up. As we wrap up now, we look at 1.3. Remember, I said 1.3 is one of a kind, just to give you a hint, okay, as to how you are going to do it. So this one, I'm going to leave it particularly for level 7s. Don't want to spoil it for them, so they can consider it as the homework, all right? They can take this as a homework. What's going to happen here? You are supposed to find the largest integer. So if they want the largest integer, you remember how to get your integers, right? So you are supposed to write this n as 2 times something exponent, and also you change this side. Okay, so this for more of level 7. All right, then you can get your answer. If you're working it out, my level 7, your answer is going to be, the answer is going to be 11. Please go and look it out, and the answer would be 11. And this brings us to the end of the presentation. So unless there is any questions from the participants. But we have reached our end of presentation for today. I hope you have enjoyed yourself, and thank you very much for joining us. We gladly appreciate your attendance, and we hope to hear from you again soon in the future. Until then, and I thank you.